debating what to write about, trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs through the phone, dreaming of a better home, while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the brujas let this last.
I don't know if the earth is painted blue.
That was the great sounds of Watson with Outside on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City made, EZ Bluez is in the building. Easy, you are better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this time to fully introduce two people that are absolutely phenomenal and two people that are needed in journalism. Two people that were able to take a perspective that is not talked about and was like, you want to know something? We're going to put a podcast together and we're going to literally give a voice to the voiceless. Two people that are pushing through the stigmas and glass ceilings that is set by a society that is really male driven. So I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving, because we are on the radio. If you're driving, keep your hands at 10 and 2 and only put your mind hands together for the hosts of my favorite hockey podcast, Off the Ice. I listen to it religiously. I'm actually sad when they go on break. I listen to it while I'm at my other job. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. I want you to put your hands together for Kat and somebody who, to continue our nepotism weekend, because we had your father here on Friday, and now we have my cousin Sam here as well. And this is actually the second time we've seen each other somewhat in person through a Zoom thing. So it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate having you on the show. And welcome to the Thunderdome. There's no escape now.
Thank you so much for having us. We were just saying how excited we are to kind of have this opportunity because it doesn't happen all that often. And to kind of be able to talk about the podcast and talk about with like such great people. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for having us. I mean, like we were saying a little bit earlier, it's definitely different to be on the other side of things. So we're so excited to be here and to get to share a little bit more about the podcast. I love that you love it, Dustin. That made my morning. But no, thank you guys for having us.
Well, I actually have to say, and I was talking to Kat before we went on air, and I didn't want to share this information until on air because I love to get the actual natural reactions. I used to be a huge hockey fan. My grandfather passed away my freshman year of high school, and then the Rangers, our team, won the Stanley Cup, and everyone had the "Now I Can Die in Peace" bumper stickers, and that kind of just shook me. And I was like, all right, I'm done. And it wasn't until your mom actually said that you had the podcast. I was like, oh, I got to give it a listen, that you actually made me fall back in love with the game. And for that, I really appreciate it. But not only that, you also, because what I really, truly love about your guys' podcast is you shine the light for everyone. You shine an all-inclusive light, which is so super important. But you also understand the societal differences. And I was able to understand how incorrect I thought before. And I was able to grow from that and get a better understanding. And that by far is one of the most valuable things out there. So thank you guys so much for doing what you do. Now that we've been vague to the listener, they're like, what are they talking about? Let's peel back the onion a little bit. Let's get into some deeper layers. So first of all, what brought both of you into journalism before we even get into the hockey aspect? What was like, hey, let's do journalism because that's a rewarding and profitable industry.
Yeah, you want to take it away? You go first.
I'll take it away. So it was one of those things that I just kind of fell into it, and it starts way back in high school where I took a journalism class. It was an elective. You just had to choose something, and I was like, well, that's fine. I guess I didn't want to take debate or whatever. And then I really fell in love with it. And I think my favorite part about it is being able to tell stories that are meaningful to me and meaningful to other people. And what you just said is so gratifying, because that's why we do what we do. And so to hear that is just like, oh, thank God, like that's all we want to do. And so from there, you know, I went to college. I did not study journalism in college, but so much of what I did do, which was visual and critical studies, was kind of understanding the sociocultural nuances of everyday culture. And so that is also a big part of our podcast, and kind of breaking down, okay, why are these issues in hockey issues? Like, where do they come from? You know, what are the differences between men's and women's hockey, like on a sociocultural and political and economic level? And that's just kind of an example of some of the topics we talk about. And so then from there, I got started into sports journalism. I write for She Scores, which is, you know, a women's sports organization in Canada. I wrote for F News for a while. It was just kind of fell into it. I love hockey. I love sports, and kind of being able to tell the stories that nobody else is telling. I mean, in sports journalism, we really see a lack of, you know, stories about like society and culture and politics and how they intersect with sports. There really isn't that out there. And so I kind of wanted to create that content. And then Sam and I got connected, and it just, you know, snowballed into this amazing thing that we've been able to do together.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm not gonna lie, I was not supposed to be in journalism at all. I went to school for pre-med, which just couldn't be more different than where I've ended up, which I'm happy to be here. But I really just realized in class, I was like, damn, you know, I got like 6 or 8 years of this. I hate it. I don't like it at all. There's no way that I'm going to be able to stick with this and do it well. So I ended up actually switching to women's gender and sexuality studies. I was there for a little bit, and I noticed I really love being creative, but there were a lot of these types of conversations that I felt, we studied a lot of intersectionality. That's basically all I studied. And I was like, there's so many stories that are so untold. And then I brought it to a sports level. I was like, I love sports. You know, a lot of times sports can be told through one lens. You know, if there's only one type of person producing and directing. And so a lot of stories end up getting lost. And that's kind of how I ended up here. Did a couple internships with sports in school and journalism, and thankfully got connected to Kat. And it was incredibly refreshing to find someone else, especially a woman who just loves the sport the way that we both do. And he had this incredible perspective just on life. And I'm so happy to, you know, we've got linked up and we're here, we're working together, we're talking to you guys. It's been fun so far.
It's definite. And I love the fact that one of the top things that I say about your podcast all the time, your chemistry is so on point. And when dealing with, you know, a co-host or dealing with someone else, having that chemistry can make or break a show. And even when you guys, and again, we'll go back behind the curtain a little bit. You guys have these 3 choices every week, and you guys don't tell each other the second choice. And you can feel there's a little bit of anticipation with that. And the only way that anticipation is real is because of how amazing your guys' chemistry is. So yeah, it's awesome that you two were able to link up. And also, unlike myself and Prestige, who are in the same city, you guys are in different states, and you're able to hold on to that chemistry. So that's pretty darn awesome. Yeah.
We've never met in person before.
Yeah.
I mean, I consider this like meeting in person. We've never,
right.
Because we're on opposite sides of the country.
Yeah.
It still works.
For a while, Kat was in Chicago and I was in New York, and now Kat is actually in California and I'm in New York. So sometimes the time zones can be a little bit of a pain in the butt, but honestly, I really think we make the best of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It always works out for me because the morning is the best, and then like you've already started your day, and so I'm like, sorry, what time is it? Like we've had a couple of like mishaps where we're like, where are you? Why aren't you on the Zoom? And we're like, oh wait,
Eastern.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. You know, trying to do promotion and different stuff like that, we run into some of those hiccups every once in a while, and it's definitely fun, but it adds to it. You know, if everything always went off smoothly, the shows wouldn't be fun. You know, Prestige knows, right, bud? Our shows never go off smoothly, and we always have a grand old time. Every once in a while, he's like, what is Easy going to say now? Where is this going to go? I have no idea. We're completely off the rails
Easy
now.
Blues, don't give off too many secrets now.
Okay.
Because we're interviewers interviewing interviewers. This is a little bit of like strange situation for us, but I think they really know where we're kind of headed. But I think one of the most interesting facts about you two is like what Easy said. You two are from different opposites of the whole entire country. So like it's really, really, really crazy. How do you guys even do prep time? Like because it's different points of view. You know what I'm saying? Like there's an East Coast way of thinking of hockey and there's a West Coast way of thinking of hockey. Like and how do they mesh? It's crazy. Just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is me recognizing that the California teams are like not good right now, and so there's no competition between us because we don't necessarily like the same teams and they're not in the same division. So there's no like East Coast West Coast rivalry because clearly one coast is so much better than the other right now. Yeah. But the good thing is like I think we're friends first and then coworkers second, which means it really works for us. I feel like really receptive to each other in terms of like changes. You know, we work really well together, I think, and we work within the same sort of systems. And what Sam so excels at is stuff that I don't know how to do. I mean, all of our graphics and our editing and everything like that, all the audio visual, that's all Sam. And she's like a master at it. And I can barely even open like Zoom and figure out how it works. Like she is so good at all of that. And so we balance each other really well.
Yeah.
I would say I want to give Kat like her flowers though, because everything that I can't do or wouldn't even know where to start doing, that's like really where Kat steps in. She is like the business, the brains, the emails, I mean, really, it's all of the things that, to be honest, I'm not really sure I would be good at. So it's Kat's right. It's really a great balance. We're really lucky. Dang, we are really lucky we got introduced to each other.
We'll pass off you.
No, it's so true. From a I've texted Sam, so I completely understand that sometimes those are the things that fall through the cracks. And you know what people don't seem to understand is once you have that good foundation of two people that have a friendship that can then blossom into a business partnership, and there are those type of opportunities. Look at myself and my buddy right there, also known as my brother from another mother. So Preston, by the way, this is Sam. She's your cousin. Understand that. That's the way things are. 2021, we make the rules. But at the end of the day, you know, having that type of synergy is important, and especially having that type of synergy in kind of trailblazing. You know, I don't know, and I'm now going to give you both your flowers. You guys have a show that takes on topics that not a lot of people will take on. You guys have a show that highlights a narrative that not a lot of people even understand exists. And it is so difficult when you are different trying to break into any type of art. And journalism is an art form. Anyone who says any different just doesn't quite understand how things go. You know, people get really wrapped up in the familiar. And if they can continue to understand and they can continue to hear that same narrative over and over again, that becomes their warm, comfortable blanket. And when you push back against that familiar, it can be a real pain. And the fact that you both have the bravery to not only push back, but to succeed in pushing back is a glorious thing. So I definitely want to give you your flowers for that now.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's really important to us to kind of have those difficult conversations because, I mean, I don't want to speak for both of us, but for me, at the very least, having the uncomfortable conversations, and we do tackle topics like systemic racism, institutionalized sexism. We've talked about how politics, you know, correlate to personality, and you know, kind of how do you look at an athlete and what if they post something that's, you know, you're personally uncomfortable with? What does that feel like as a fan and as a consumer of sports? You know, we tackle these uncomfortable topics because I believe, you know, the more that we talk about these conversations, the more comfortable we are with being uncomfortable. And that's where growth really happens. The more that we're able to kind of endure that that uncomfortability and that kind of not knowing where we stand and what to say and how to react, that's where we really learn about other points of view and grow as individuals and as a community and as a sport in an industry. And so for us, it's so important to kind of engage with those conversations because most people aren't. And we feel like it's our responsibility.
I will say too, I completely honestly agree with everything Kat said, as per usual. But also there's like, yeah, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. Imagine how uncomfortable the person who's experiencing the racism, the sexism, the transphobia, imagine how uncomfortable they are all the time. And I think, like Kat said, there's like this social responsibility that I can be uncomfortable for 2 hours if it means that it brings this type. But honestly, I'm never really uncomfortable. Our guests are.
Yeah, we've never had like a bad moment, but
yeah, but I could see how maybe people who are unaware or maybe a little less educated might get uncomfortable having those conversations. But to those people, I would like to say, imagine how uncomfortable, maybe some gay athletes are in their locker room, or how uncomfortable the one woman in the locker room might feel, or hockey's not a super diverse sport. It's mostly white kids. So like, imagine how someone who's different might feel uncomfortable, and then put yourself in their shoes. It's all about empathy, right? Like that's really what we're trying to do here, is to like get people to realize there's just a lot of different angles here. And we need to get more comfortable talking about everybody's angle if we actually believe in inclusivity and equality, really.
No, it's so true, and I love the fact that you were able to engage in these uncomfortable conversations. That's something that we do here on Behind the Brand on a regular, which perfectly segues into this next question. Again, huge fan of the podcast, but I also, when I do my research, look, I'm a white dude. That's another dude right there. We're in journalism. We're sitting here in t-shirts and shorts doing our show. I don't necessarily care what I look like. I probably rolled out of bed about 42 minutes ago. And that's okay for us. And that's not okay for you guys. And that doesn't make me happy. Not only that, but even in like some of your successes, on the Apple podcast, you have a 5-star review that says the show is great and Sam's voice is sexy. That's such a, like, it's awesome and cool. And I'm not going to say that because you're my cousin and it's weird.
Thank you.
But I got you. But I'm also supremely like overprotective, just so you know, like you have no idea. You have now like a rabid, like Tasmanian devil. Like I tried to find this dude. I was going to say some things. I was like, well, maybe they're friends. I was like, I don't care. He should know better than.
Easy Bluez, we're friends on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Behind the Brand, myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Raised, Elm City Made. Easy Bluez is in the building. Behind the Brand, we got the co-host, actually the host, not even co-host. They are hosts. They have this podcast called Off the Ice. We're talking about on Behind the Brand on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Easy, go ahead and continue to talk about the Tasmanian devil. I want to hear about this.
So I'm super overly protective, like crazy overly protective, just so you know. Like, well, apparently I fit really well in the dynamic of the family. So on top of all of just having to put together a good show, having to, make sure your topics are on point, having to push the envelope in topics, you also have that other hurdle of people not necessarily taking you as seriously as they would take a male counterpart. And that honestly, and I know we're on the radio, so I'm going to say stinks. That honestly stinks, because you guys are so on point with everything you do. Do you feel the pressure to make sure that all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted? Like, is that a very real moment? And now I'm going to give you the floor to really have that uncomfortable conversation.
I mean, for myself, absolutely. And, we've seen, our favorite kinds of viewers are the ones who are young girls, because we get like some really lovely comments of like, oh my gosh, like I love hearing, someone like me on the podcast, or like seeing somebody else, talk about hockey in a way that I don't really see. Like, we love that sort of content. And so there is this kind of understanding that we have to be very careful and that we there's not a lot of leeway if we make a mistake or if we mess up or whatever, because there are eyes on us, and there's not very many women, you know, in our position. And so that does mean that there's a certain amount of responsibility we carry in kind of, you know, making sure that we are as successful as possible, and we don't make those mistakes because, you know, we don't really have that room. And so it is something that we definitely think about, and I think about, and I think it's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about like what women in sports look like, and I feel like for a very long time there were sort of two expectations. Either you were like the tomboy and you didn't like pink and you were just like one of the boys and whatever, or you were very like hyper feminine and you're just here because you're pretty and you don't actually like sports because girls don't care about sports, right? Like these are two caricatures that don't really exist, and they're just kind of socialized into our context and understanding of what women look like and act like in this industry. But I think for me, kind of growing up with those sorts of ideas of what women in this space are like, just through, you know, popular media and contemporary culture and things like that, it's so important to me to be real and genuine. And that means, you know, admitting when I make a mistake, and you know, admitting when like, oh, there was, you know, something that we messed up a little bit and we had to go back and say like, hey, sorry, you know, we missed something. And like, and that's okay. And it's important for me to kind of show people, but to show young girls especially, that you can be vulnerable and you can be genuine and you can be honest, and we don't have to kind of portray this perfect picture of what it looks like to be, you know, a woman, because that's not real. And even in this space and where there is so little representation, to be honest in who you are and what you think and how you work, and admitting when you make a mistake and growing as a person, like that is so important to me. Don't often see that, kind of preserving that integrity of just being a human being, you know, even where we have flaws and faults.
Yeah, I mean, working in sports, I'd be lying if I said I had a really easy go at it. I definitely didn't. I'm trying to pick my words very carefully. I think it can be incredibly hard being a woman in this industry, and great in a lot of ways too, but you're already kind of expected to fail or to not know what you're doing. And instead of letting that hurt me, I kind of took it and ran with it, because no one really was expecting me to do well anyway, right? And so, I mean, I was, but nobody that I was working with, I think, really saw that coming, especially when you get comments like, you're not going to give that to a girl, are you? I'm like, hey, this girl is 25 years old and she's a woman, and her Emmy is sitting in the back of the screen. So I'm not sure what you're talking about, you know, but you come to this space, and I think especially as a woman, a lot of times it's either expected that you're just here because you want to date an athlete, or you're just here because you think the guys are cute, or, you know, you just wanted to work with a bunch of boys, like, you know, whatever. I think it's really easy to kind of run with, well, if no one expects me to succeed, then I can really do whatever I want here. And I think that's where Kat and I have honestly excelled, is that we decided to take out any of the rigidness, the rules, the expectations of what a show with, you know, two women should look like. Not that there's really any that even exist. Ours is one of the first hockey ones that I am aware of. So I think when you take that and you say, okay, like, there's kind of crap expectations cut for me already. Now, like, I can do anything and like watch us surprise them all, you know. But I think there is like, yeah, there's that, like, her voice is sexy, or I used to show up in the office, you know, in a dress one day, and they'd be like, oh, you have a date? Like, can a girl just wear a dress to work to cut her highlight? Like, come on now. So yeah, I mean, listen, I think you can take it and run with it two ways. You can let it kind of break you down, or you can say, you know what, there's no expectation for me anyway, so I might as well just do whatever the hell I want. And honestly, it's worked out pretty well for us so far.
Yeah, and to link it kind of into hockey, we talk so much about how, you know, teams having expectations or not can influence how they play, especially in the playoffs, right? Like we saw the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sorry, Canadian fans.
Yeah,
who like love the Leafs. I'm so sorry, but there was like an expectation that they were going to fail, and they didn't perform the way that they were kind of expected to. And so I think there is that part of what Sam just said of like, okay, nobody's really watching us. There's no pressure. So we can kind of take the best parts of traditional sports media and mix it with whatever we want to do. And it has been kind of nice in that there's nobody really watching us, which means that we get to create something great.
Right. No, it's so true. And I absolutely love your guys' answers on that. And also, I want to take that time to really highlight that before Sam spoke, she said, I'm going to be very particular about my words. And I won't, because I happen to look like most of the people that she has to be worried about, being particular about the words. So I'm going to take my privilege and I'm going to say, it stinks that you guys have to battle constantly against the fragile male white ego. And I said it. That's right. I said it. And if they want to come for me, they can come for me. They know where I live. I'm not hard to find. I advertise where I'm going to be. Oh yeah. I'm on one today. You know, but that really is what comes on a bunch of different times is that type of aspect is, you know, oh, well, they can't do it better than this. They can't do it better than that. Or it's not here or there. I have been in situations. My little sister is a competitive CrossFit athlete. When she graduated high school, she was a 6-year varsity gymnastics. She was a 5-year varsity track, top 3 pole vaulter in Suffolk County, just rocking it. She now is a coach for gymnastics school and everything like that. So anytime some dude with toxic masculinity, and there's a bunch of them out there. Yeah, see, I'm saying all the words. I don't care. Bring it. I said, hey, anyone who wants to find me July 1st, I'll be at Stella Bluez. You know, so, you know, they're like, oh, look at the, you know, oh, I could just do this, this, and this. And there's no way women could do this, this, or that. And I'll take look at my sister's Instagram and I'll pull up like her powerlifting. I was like, well, do that then. Can you do that? Because that bar right there is half that weight. And I can't do that. Can you do it? Because if you could do half that weight without the ease there, then this is in the conversation. If not, maybe we should shush. Maybe just a shush. And then they get mad at me, and then I'm probably not allowed to be in that spot for much longer, but it's okay. I probably didn't want to be there anyway. But that's the responsibility of those that have that privilege. You know, Prestige and I have had these conversations on air, off air, to the side of air. It is extremely important. Being the first is extremely important. There is that responsibility there. You know, but also being the people that have that privilege, the people that look like me, it's important for us to say, hey, what was there before, although was the societal norm, we probably weren't that intelligent as a society back then. And now we need to grow and we need to move forward. And thank you guys for having that voice and reminding weird, bearded, tattooed people like me that there are other things I need to open my mouth about. Unfortunately, you know, I have, you know, my oldest is non-binary, and my twins are boys, so I don't know the female perspective. So I've never had to defend the female perspective because, again, my little sister could beat anybody up possible, so I never had to defend her. You know, so thank you for giving me an understanding that there was another fight I needed to jump on. And that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to have you on the show, so we could voice these things and so that you guys could have these conversations. So.
No, I appreciate that. And I would even take it a step further too. Like if we want to take it past the like the economics, the political, like, and even just look at it at its like core, which is creative, right? Like the job of a creative is quite literally to create. And I think when you have a sport, like I for example, I don't want to screw the numbers up all too much. My last job, I think my department was somewhere between 82 to 84% men, mostly white men, which is whatever. And it kind of started to feel like when we were watching TV, it was just like the same thing over and over and over and over again. And there was a project where I was supposed to be, you know, coming up with interview questions for spring training, and I had worked super hard on it. None of the questions ended up getting asked, and then it just ended up being the same interview of every team like 32 times. It's the same questions, the same stuff. And so because of that, at least personally, I was able to take a step back and say, like, this is boring. Like, this is just boring. And on top of the fact that it's boring, we have so much important stuff to talk about. And so I don't know, I would just even say to creatives, like, you should be able to be empathetic enough to like understand these perspectives if you're going to put yourself in journalism, because that's quite literally is getting people information that they don't have that's important. That's your job. But just from a creative sense of it, like, just take a step back and wonder if you've been pumping out the same stuff, because you know, a lot of sports, hockey and baseball are two of those specific. They want to grow the sport. They want more fans. They want this. And then everyone's like, diversity. And they're like, is there anything else? Is there anything else that we can do instead? Anybody?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's just a lot of the same. So even as a creative, like, you get behind the socio-economic, political side of it, but you will become a better editor, producer, director, musician, audio. Like, you will be better when you diversify. I promise, because you are going to learn different perspectives, different angles, different lenses that you didn't even know existed. And it's like a thrill. It's exciting. It's creating. That's what creating feels like. It doesn't feel like clones of people just making the same content over and over again. To me, at least. Does it?
Yeah. And there's real economic benefits to being diverse. I mean, that's one of the things we talk about, particularly with women's sports, is that, of course, there's a social conversation to be had, but we really push that like economic perspective. You know, okay, how financially beneficial is it for sports media and broadcasting to invest in women's sports, whether it be by time, coverage, money? Like, we have that conversation. There was a Gallup study from 2014, I believe, that polled like 800 business units. And they found that those that were more gender and racially diverse had a 14% higher revenue. That's a huge amount of money long-term. And so I think people forget that, like, yes, while socially and culturally it's so important to have gender and racial diversity, there's real economic benefits to it. And so, quite frankly, you're missing out on a huge consumer basis that is largely untapped. If we're thinking about women's sports, there is a huge, you know, captive audience, but also a growing audience that is largely unmarketed to. You're missing out on all of the potential sponsorships and promotional content and that sort of revenue. And you're missing out on, you know, just regular TV revenue, which is the largest amount of like money for sports, you know, leagues to make. So it's like, you're missing this giant like economic boon that nobody is accessing right now. And so, you know, that's also part of the conversation, is we're like, okay, wait, we can make the industry better in terms of inclusivity and accessibility, but we can also make it more profitable, which is really the conversation that people tend to listen to.
Unfortunately, that's usually
No, it's it's so true, and it's so, to me, two things I wanted to piggyback on. One, from the pure simplest term, for the person who has no idea marketing and all that kind of stuff, the guy driving right now is like, they're saying a whole bunch of big words that completely lost me. I'll break it down. When you are diverse, there are more people. When there are more people, there's more average and percentage that you're going to do. Some people call it the Gene Simmons aspect. And for those who don't know, Gene Simmons is a absolutely disgusting man. But he would have this technique where if there was 1 million women, he would ask all of them to go on a date. And a bunch of them would shoot him down, but he would continue to ask, because the larger percentage, the more likely you're going to get a yes. And it is that same philosophy. When you present something to everyone and you make it theirs, and you are able to have them cling on to it and have them believe in something, then the likelihood that more revenue is going to come in is higher. You know, and that's the simplest term I can break it down. You know, if you have 10 people in a schoolyard and you only pitch a ball to 2 people, you know, you have a 50-50 shot that one of them is going to play. But if you pitch it to all 10, you know, now your odds are a lot better. And that's so true. I mean, Prestige and I are actually huge pro wrestling fans, and we've actually been talking about the need for it, for, you know, women's captivating the women audience and how important that is moving forward. And we start to see some of these changes move in. We start to see some of these things happen. And then, of course, because a lot of the fans themselves, the older school fans, rely more just on, beer and cheap pops, things get lost in that. And then people are told, oh, there's no money in that. You don't know that, though, because you haven't actually engaged that audience yet. You haven't actually put the time in. Doing one half-butt pay-per-view 3 years ago and then kind of like forgetting about it is not the same as really investing in storylines, really in telling these incredible stories and allowing that to happen.
Easy Bluez. I hate to cut you off. I hate to stop, but just pump the brakes real quick. Just pump the brakes. I want to talk about wrestling. I want to talk about hockey. I want to talk about their podcast. I want to talk about their show real quick. You two have different personalities. Which one is the Stephen A. Smith and which one is the Max Kellerman? Which one is the cool, calm, collected one? And which one is the one who's not afraid to push those buttons and push the envelope when it comes to talking about the real deal of hockey? I'm an average Joe. I want to know. Get me interested. Get me intrigued about your product. Go right ahead. Doesn't matter which one says it first.
Oh, you're putting it on me first. Well, we'll see. I feel like you're definitely more confrontational than I am.
Okay.
Yeah, she's nodding her head. She's like, yes, I picked correctly.
All right.
Yeah. Sam's like, I'm gonna tell it how it is. Like, and I don't care. And I'm very much more the one who's like, okay, like, how do we kind of step around this? How do we talk about this? And sort of like I can write a corporate email, like, no problem. Like, that is, you know what I mean? And that sort of mentality. And I think that's why we balance each other out, because we have those sort of different personalities. We can speak to the sports media and broadcasting agencies. We can talk directly to ESPN and these people. We can talk to Gary Bettman or whoever, and we can, craft our words and our audience and our product to fit that narrative. But we can also talk to like the person on the street. And I think that's where like Sam is so great, and that she's like, you know what, come at me, let's do it. Like, let's talk about it. And I love it.
I think it's the New York. And it's probably also being a woman too. I think like you really sometimes have to like flip the switch of like professionalism, of like, I call it like my customer service voice versus like my podcast voice. Like the way I'd be like, good morning, how are you? That is not like, it's like kind of, I can flip the switch. But there's something about the New York, I cannot hide that. Like I specifically thought of Tom Wilson, Kat. Like
that was a big one for us.
No, and I realized after that I was so heated. Tom Wilson had basically like judo flipped Artemi Panarin, and then he was injured for the rest of the season. I was heartbroken because I thought the Rangers were going to the playoffs. I thought they were great. I'm not going to get emotional about it, whatever. And I just remember being so mad. I was like, Tom Wilson, like, I don't really understand. It wasn't a fair fight. Like, weird flex of your fragile masculinity. If you'd like to talk to me, we can totally do that. New York's upset. Damn. I was so pissed off. But yeah, I would say Kat's like always got her head on her shoulders. I really admire her about that. Yeah, I'm definitely probably more the one just saying whatever.
But I think like when we do our stars, I feel like that's always like our most fun part, because we get to be like kind of creative with it and get like kind of fun. We get to make our jokes, whatever, when we're talking about like the political positionality of Russian athletes and Putin's like Russia, like that's a hard conversation to make jokes out of, you know what I mean? Like you do have your boundaries.
But I will say it's very weird of Putin. For weird to Putin, so whatever.
Yeah, it's like we have those conversations, or we're talking about systemic racism. Okay, that's, you can't really make jokes about that. No, but then when we're talking about like the Buffalo Sabres and their season, you get to be a little bit more like, wow, what a dumpster fire that was. Sucks for New York. You know what I mean? Like you get to kind of have your jokes with that. And same thing with the stars. So I think, but if we're putting labels on it, Sam's definitely the Stephen A. Smith.
Okay. Stephen A. Smith on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven. Behind the brand, myself, Prestige, and my quote-unquote white privilege, Stephen A. Smith, Easy Bluez, Long Island raised, Elm City made. Sam, since you're the Stephen A. Smith, I want to ask a question to you. Is there a team you absolutely despise in hockey? since Stephen A. Smith hates his Cowboys, what team do you absolutely love to take punches on and love like to rag on? Go right ahead.
Flyers. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, all right. She knows that I like the Flyers.
I know. No, I think there's just something about that Rangers Flyers rivalry that it'll stay so in my core. I'll never forget one of my favorite Christmas gifts ever. My parents had got my brother and I tickets to the Winter Classic, which was in Philadelphia. It was outside at, I think it's PNC, right? Arena or
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, thank you. I knew it was something. It was the baseball one, whatever. It was in Philly, and I don't know. First of all, the Rangers Flyers, that Philly New York rivalry is just so real anyway. When it comes to, I mean, look at the Eagles and the Giants. Baseball probably a little less, but even the Mets and the Phillies, they got a little heat. Oh yeah, so definitely the Flyers. I'm always expecting some big fights when we head to Broad Street, and you know when they come up here. I feel like low key Washington and New York always play like a pretty intense game too. So, but if I had to pick one team, I'm going Flyers.
Flyers is the one to hate.
Yeah,
Katherine,
Flyers for me.
Yes.
who is the team you absolutely despise? Who are your Flyers?
You know what? And I feel so terrible because I know somebody connected to this team, but it's the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm sorry. You are 4 years old and you're in the Stanley Cup playoffs again. Like, are you kidding me? I'm also really bitter because they knocked out the Minnesota Wild. My bracket was terrible. By the way, I should never make brackets because like, I think I cursed every team. Nobody is in it anymore. Like it was so terrible. So that's partly my fault. Sorry, Wild. But I was so upset. I was like, oh, they were the underdogs. I was really taking them. And then so since then, I'm like, all right, Vegas, Montreal's coming for you. And we are pulling for that team. So I think it has to be Vegas because I'm like, really? Like, oh, come on. Are you kidding me?
They also knocked out Colorado, which I thought they were going to the cup. Like that was my team. I swore that this was the year for Colorado. And I mean, after game one and the hit and the whatever, it was a lot, but yeah, that's a good one too, Kat. Screw Vegas.
We're probably alienating so many fans. I'm so sorry.
Oh my
God. If you're a Vegas fan, good for you. I'm happy for you, but also.
Wait, by the way, real quick, kind of just random, you see Fleury's not starting tonight?
He might not. Robin Leonard started last night and it worked out for them. Oh, they were so close in overtime, except they weren't. And if you didn't watch this game, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but it was, I still have nightmares. It was like 18. It was like less than 2 minutes into the overtime. And then Carey Price was just like on the ice and then they lifted it, whatever.
Anyway,
in my nightmares. It was terrible. I'm sure Carey Price is like thinking about it too. But yeah, Vegas has been an interesting storyline to cover this year because especially in light of, and I don't want to get too into it, but there's so many conversations in hockey right now about officiating, and parity and that sort of thing. And that's something that I've definitely noticed in the current like Montreal Vegas matchup right now is that there's been a lot of conversations about officiating and it potentially being in Vegas's favor. Obviously, I don't want to say anything like either for or against that argument because that's a really delicate situation that we don't have context for it really, but it's been interesting certainly in how people feel about Vegas and their connection.
Now, I see the chemistry already. Now, do you two get so passionate you forget it to actually work with the whole Off the Ice podcast?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like definitely. And you know why? Because we record once a week and we'll jump on and we have something called a rundown where we, have everything that we would like to hit, all the topics, everything like that. And we will start to go through it and we'll just talk. And then we'll be like, wait, we should save this for when we record. And then we'll be like, okay. And then we'll start talking again. We'll be like, wait, maybe we should save that for when we record. It does get very fun. Honestly, when Kat and I had first set out, start the show, conceptually, we are a morning show. We would like people to wake up and start their day with us, start their day with a little bit of hockey. Yeah. That's what we would like to do. It was supposed to be about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It's just we have extended now. Sometimes we hit an hour and a half when we have guests. And it's there's no reason to cut it short because we love the conversations we're having, and our guests are so incredible and always so willing to talk and maybe have these conversations that can make people uncomfortable. And I don't know, it's just been, we do sometimes, I think, forget that we're working because we just love the sport. And I don't know about Kat, I just love making it a more inclusive place for, I hope when I would like, you know, if I have kids one day, them to play hockey, I would really love them to walk in a locker room and feel comfortable and accepted. And not even just that, but also accepting of who they're sitting next to, regardless of what they look like or who they love or, you know, how they identify. You know, I would like to build a sport that ends up being beautiful for my children because I have gotten so much out of it. I'm so lucky, whether it be in my job or just personally, friendships, my career. I'm so lucky to have this sport. And it makes me really sad to imagine people who can't find comfort in it maybe the way that I have, you know?
Okay. One
Now,
thing that got to me, but easy. I see a light bulb above your head.
Yes, yeah. Now I actually have the interviewer to interviewer.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the question that no interviewer or interviewee wants to hear. Who's your favorite interview?
Oh my gosh.
Go
ahead. Do you have an idea?
Personal favorite. Like I have one. Okay, so we've done a lot of really, really incredible interviews so far on the show. I'm going to name two because I had two that I really loved. Our first one ever, the show's first guest ever was Sarah Nurse. That is just a conversation I personally will never forget. We're both women who've grown up in the sport who maybe weren't as much on the tomboy side. We both really enjoyed makeup and having our hair done and throwing a fit on. And we used to both maybe get a little made fun of for that. And so just having that conversation was really refreshing for me. It felt like I found somebody else like me in the sport, which I hadn't really found so much. So that was one of my favorites. I would also say one of our most recent conversations with Chanel Keenan was just incredible. I so much loved having her on the show, and it was just so fluid and great. And obviously, we love to have all of our guests back at some point. But I will say those are my top two favorites. Everybody else, you're incredible. We obviously love talking to you, but those were the ones for me personally. I just had a little more of like a personal connection with.
Yeah, I will say like all of our guests have been so wonderful so far. And I think one of the things that does set us apart from other, not even just hockey podcasts, but sport podcasts in general, is that because we do occupy this journalist space, we do have access to guests that maybe other people wouldn't. We also have media credentials and media passes. So we are in post-game media conferences. We were just in a press conference for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like we have access to those sorts of hockey spaces. Most podcasts don't, just because of our position and our jobs. So that is like something that we're pretty proud of. Definitely Sarah Nurse, Canadian Olympian, she was wonderful to chat with. Chanel, the intersectionality consultant for the Seattle Kraken, who is now a friend of ours, which is also great. That's my favorite thing. We get our guests on, and it's like, I don't know if you guys feel that, but as like an interviewer, I get that like golden retriever energy where I'm like, I just want to be friends with you. Like, let's just chat and like be friends. And so it's always great when we have guests on who we get to kind of transfer it into like an off the air sort of friendship or relationship. So that's always been great. And then we just had Jessica Platt on.
So cool.
And she was just so cool. And I was so starstruck, and I was like, hi, thank you for being here. Like if we were in person, I'd have you sign something, the first trans athlete for the PWHPA and the CWHL. Like she's just so amazing. So you're really putting me on the spot. I don't think I can choose, which is such a cop-out answer for
you cop out.
Totally a cop-out answer. But oh well.
Sometimes life is just cop-out answers. Let's be real. I mean, you guys talk about how you bring the realism to journalism, and that's a very real answer, because if we had to guess, we had to choose, I wouldn't be able to give a good answer. And I'm sure Preston, I could give you answers on who we'll never have back on the show, but I couldn't give you answers on who was my favorite. But I'm a negative person, so it works out for me.
Ladies, what are some specific segments that a new listener can expect from the Off the Ice podcast? Like, what are some things that are guaranteed?
Well, I mean, the good thing is, again, like I mentioned earlier, we've taken the most successful parts of traditional sports media, and one of those things is that we script it and structure it the way you would a TV show, and that all comes from Sam and her experience, you know, the NHL Network and her Emmy that's in the background. And that all comes from her. And so, you know, every episode you can kind of expect the same thing. We have our introduction, you know, we run down what we're doing that week. We do our 3 stars, which is always fun. You know, like the NHL gives out their 3 stars of the game. We're like, here's some like wacky, but also news that's around the NHL. Our second picks are always like joke, like fun picks. And then, you know, we do our regular content. We try to hit women's hockey. We always hit the NHL. Every once in a while, there will be hockey news from around the world that we'll cover. That's really great. Like the New Zealand Ice Hockey Association. I'm so sorry. Their name is really long. But, you know, they drafted 2 female goaltenders for the first time. And, you know, the 2 first female athletes in that organization. So we're like, oh, we got to highlight that. And then we always have our hockey community highlight, which I think is my favorite part of what we do.
Yeah. And when we started out the show, you know, we talked about what we would do, right? Would we cover strictly women's hockey? How would we cover it? What were we going to cover? And when you talk about feminism in general, it really means like the equality of the sexes. So we, at least for us, you know, there are a lot of shows just about the NHL, but it was really important to us that not only do we talk about women's hockey, but we also create this space where we talk about men's hockey too. Like I, at least for me, never wanted to feel like we were in a box, that because we're women, we only had to talk about women's hockey, women's sports, whatever. So I will say on the show, you are going to get a 50-50. We are going to talk about women's hockey, and that means whatever is going on in that. You know, we have IIHF coming up. There was a lot of cancellations, PWHPA and WHL. We're always going to cover whatever's going on in that sphere, but we are also going to give the men their props too. And because that angle is, you know, 2 women talking about the NHL, not one that's super prominent at all. So it was really important for us that we would cover both. And I feel like we've done I feel like we've done a good job of it at this point. It's been a really nice balance.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
fun.
For me personally, since I'm not really into hockey, what got me, I like going to the games, like seeing the fights going on. I love seeing the hockey players just go ahead and brawl with each other. But who are the top players right now that me, an average Joe, can look out for when it comes to hockey as we speak of?
Ooh, gosh.
Yeah, that's good.
Sam, do you want to go first?
I have some bias answers.
Okay.
I mean, top players, I'm going to say when he's healthy, Artemi Panarin, because that's my guy. I really think he's one of the best guys in the league. And I think if he comes back healthy, we have a lot to look out for. And I actually think that these could be big years for both Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid. And not only because they're 2 of the best players in the league, but we're also in a place where neither of their teams are in the playoffs. And so I think we're going to have to kind of watch teams figure out, like, how do we get there with the best talent in the league, and why aren't we there? So I'd be really interested to see what happens with McDavid and Matthews. Not so much that I expect them leaving their organizations, but I think their organizations are either going to have to make moves with them or kind of rework the team that they have built around them, because neither of those teams are in places where they would like to be, and honestly probably where they should be based off the money they're spending. So I'm going Panarin, Matthews, McDavid.
Okay, I'm glad you picked them, because I wanted to kind of throw it to like some young and up and coming talent that's good to keep your eye on. Definitely Cole Caulfield for the Montreal Canadiens. He's 20 years old. He's gotten his 2nd playoff goal so far. He is so fast and he plays that transition game so well. He always has his head up. He has been fantastic to watch this entire series, but I think next year he's just going to get that much better. Andrei Svechnikov for the Carolina Hurricanes, who I am sad that they're out of the playoffs, because I did take them to go farther than they actually did. So that's my fault for cursing them, I'm sure. But he has been, every single year has gotten better and better. He's the first one to like successfully do that like lacrosse style goal, which is where you like balance a puck on the end of your stick and kind of like flip it into the net. You don't really see that often. So that was pretty nifty. But he's also been just so electric for the Carolina Hurricanes. And then I think I have to go Kirill Kaprizov for the Minnesota Wild. He, while not a traditional rookie because he played in the KHL, which is the sort of Russian equivalent of NHL.
Oh, Katherine, Sam, I'm very sorry. We're getting the Apollo curtain from our radio producer, Aaron. But just please tell us where we can find your off the ice podcast, if I can barely speak, since we're going off air right now. On
Sure.
WHL 313.5 FM.
Yeah, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you normally find your podcasts. You can find Off the Ice, just find it there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Off the Ice and on Twitter at BT_Off the Ice. So we're pretty easy to find if you just search Off the Ice Hockey Podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us.
Definitely. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Wondering what to write about, trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs through the phone, dreaming of a better home, while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the Bluez let this last.